Don't fall, don't fall. Hi. So today's video is inspired by Rachel. She recently did this on her channel, and I feel like I've seen this type of video popping up recently, and I think it's so fun. So I kind of wanted to like hop on the train a little bit. So today we are going to be looking at the first lines of a bunch of my stories that I've written over the past, like, I don't know, 4-ish years. I was kind of back and forth about whether or not I wanted to do like just my manuscripts, like my longer projects, or like just my short stories. And I think it would be fun to just kind of like mix a whole bunch of them together. So I've picked a few projects that I've worked on over the past like 4-ish years. They're all in various stages of doneness. I kind of wanted to pick stories that in my memory I remember like spending a significant amount of time on the story. We can kind of have a little bit of a conversation about how to approach first lines and maybe the mistakes that I made and why I didn't like some of them and why I did like some of them. But yeah, if you guys haven't seen Rachel's video, which was like my direct inspiration for this, definitely go check it out. I'm gonna quickly explain the rankings. So at the bottom, we have staying in the drafts. It's not a very good line. Above that, we have doing too much or not enough. You'll know it when you see it. Right in the middle, we have what it says on the tin. These are lines that are not bad by any means. They might even be quite good in the context of the entire paragraph or the entire scene or chapter, but it's not like, the sentence is not like doing backflips, you know? But there's nothing wrong with that because not every sentence needs to do backflips. Then we have my eyes are open. I would definitely keep reading. You know, like if I saw this in a book, I would keep reading. And then at the top we have magnum opus LOL. This is for lines that like, I like it, I wouldn't rewrite it. That's all. Let's get into the lines. Okay, I've kind of like laid these out in chronological order as much as possible. So let's start with, oh my God, this like story haunts me. It haunts me. The first story is called Real Girls. The line is, this is how I would imagine our re-encounter. So Real Girls, this short story, I think I've talked about it on this channel in like one video. This was like technically published. I actually wrote this for something for school, but it's like a writing contest or something. It was a contemporary literary piece. The main character sort of has struggled with her sexuality, her family's acceptance of that sexuality. The opening scene is like the main character sort of like kind of airing out some regrets that she has about a girl that she liked who was her friend when she was younger. I guess a lot of things went unsaid between them. I don't even freaking remember. There's nothing wrong with that as a premise, I think, for like an opening scene. It was more just like the cadence of this sentence is just not giving what she needs to get. The word re-encounter is bizarre. I don't know why I chose that. I don't think it looks very good on the page. I think it kind of gets like twisted in your mouth when you try to say it. Yeah, I would definitely workshop this now. I think I wrote this about 4 years ago now. To be honest, I think I'm gonna put this in staying in the drafts. I'm not happy with this one. Next we have The Right to Be Forgotten. In the last 4 months, Shay has gotten into the habit of thinking I'm depressed. So when she visits my apartment on Sunday morning, she brings me plastic containers of chopped fruit, pre-mixed salads, and frozen lasagna. That's a long one. Okay, so for context, this is a piece I wrote for workshop. I think my first workshop when I was in university. It was like a sci-fi piece about a type of tech where you can like save and replay memories. The story was like focused on a main character who he is caught up in rewatching a certain memory. And so the piece is about how the main character, whose name I can't remember, is in basically support group for other people who are like him that can't move on from the past, like, to a point where it kind of like impairs their life. So it was a speculative piece, but the tone of it was it wasn't really like focused on the memory tech, and it was more on the concept of like letting things go. This piece is okay. I think there are a lot of things that I would have changed about the story now. I think I just probably would have like contemplated on the theme a little bit more. I think the arc of the story is a little bit predictable. I'm gonna put this in my eyes are open because this is kind of like the main character's voice for this story. You know, in AA, how you have like a sponsor or something like that? So this is like the person that does regular check-ins on the main character to like make sure that he's functioning and stuff like that. And I think like the tone of the main character throughout the story is that it's like, yeah, he does go to this support group, but he kind of thinks he's above it. Like he kind of thinks he's fine. So I'm gonna say that this opening line is fine. Okay, next we have All Roads. The night grinds on. I think my gut is telling me that this is what it says on the tin. For context, All Roads is about a group of, oh my god, what is it? High school students after their senior year of high school. And they like go on a road trip. The main character is specifically like, for reasons, she doesn't necessarily want to be on the road trip, but she was kind of coerced into going. I actually have a line editing video about this piece if you're curious. I don't hate it. I think this is doing what it says on the tin. I think when I think of like grinding, I think that matches how the main character is feeling about being on this road trip, is that it's like an arduous task. Okay, next we have Two's Company. The opening line is, Emo's home smelled of tangerines. Okay, I have a very not great relationship with this story anymore. I'll talk about why in a second, but as a line in and of itself, I think that this is doing what it says on the tin. This piece was another piece that was written for workshop. It's just not the kind of story that I would write now. First of all, it's like literary. Second of all, the main character is a 20-something guy who's living in Korea. Because of like the level of contemplation that the story demands to have about like culture and identity and stuff like that, I think that is veering into some like difficult territory. The story isn't about like being Korean or anything like that, but I think it's inevitable to have some kind of like cultural contemplation, and I don't think I can necessarily write that with the level of nuance that would deserve. How do I feel about the line? It's like a solid whatever, you know? I don't think I knew exactly what I was trying to write while I was writing it. Next we have Lullaby of Birdland. The piano had put her to sleep, now it wakes her. I don't know how I feel about this. A bunch of young, I think they were teenagers, who bond through music. It was kind of an exploration of the role that music plays, I guess, in expressing things that sometimes we can't express in words. How well did I execute that? I couldn't tell you. What was really lacking about this story was that I didn't root it in a specific place. And so the story kind of felt flimsy because it was like a historical piece, but it wasn't rooted in a specific point in history because I didn't want to commit to researching a historical time period. And I think that really made the story lack substance. It just kind of felt like the story had no setting. Like it had a general atmosphere and it had the outline of certain characters, but without a solid setting, it just felt kind of incomplete. But the line in isolation, it's okay. I think that it's doing what it says on the tin. I don't hate it. So I think smack in the middle works for me. Okay, next we have Feast of the High Souls. Armor climbed up onto the roof of the tavern. Actually, I think I also wrote this for a workshop. This was a piece that I wrote when I was like kind of just getting into fantasy. Like I hadn't really committed to fully being in my fantasy era, but I was like on the cusp. This is actually like an early short story that I wrote in the world of Project Moon, which is my YA fantasy novel. So Armor is like a side character in that. I had written about him to try to get to know him better. This was me just trying to like slowly dip my toes into fantasy, but I also didn't really know what I was doing back then. Armor climbed up into the roof of the tavern. I think that this is an easy doing not enough. Not every first line has to be life-changing, but this line in and of itself is just not that interesting to me. I actually think if I was like still working on this story now, I would actually start the story. I would take out the entire first scene and I would just start the story on the second scene, the orphans lined up, shoulders square, backs pressed against the tavern's peeling walls, dressed as presentably as a band of slum children could manage. I think that's a much more evocative image, and it's a lot more specific. I think back then, I guess I just didn't really understand the concept of like starting a story later than it needs to be. Especially in a short story, you really have to think about efficiency. Next we have The Maiden. The day the Hartwoods moved into Port Kilton's old mansion caused quite the ruckus among the locals. You know what? I think this is... Okay, let's think about that. I didn't work that long on this. I decided I didn't like it, so I ended up not doing anything with it. The premise of this story is that there's this rich, old, famous couple who move to a really small town, and it just like confuses everybody. They secretly want to have an audience with someone called the Maiden, who is a psychic. I think that there's something about this tone that I like, bird's eye view kind of thing, like a sort of pulled up psychic distance, because it creates this feeling of like a storybook tale. I think I'm gonna put this in My Eyes Are Open. What I would change though is the phrase like among the locals. I would play around with it a little bit more to make it like even more evocative, but yeah, I think it's fine. So next we have Blanco. There was a ringing in his ear, the aftershock of an explosion as it bled into the buzz of an old memory. So Blanco, it is the book that I worked on in 2020, I think right before I started making videos. So I don't think I've talked much about this project, but it is a cyberpunk. The opening scene is basically the main character caught in an explosion at the institution / facility that he lives / works in. So it's very much in media res. I don't hate it. Like, there's something about this that I don't hate. Obviously, this passive voice is like, my brain is like snagging on it, you know? There was a ringing in his ear. But also, okay, I can kind of understand like why I chose that. The aftershock of an explosion as it bled into the buzz of an old memory. I think I would play around with some of the word choice that I'm using here. I do like the premise of sort of this mixing of sensations. I don't hate it, but you know what? I think it's doing too much. I think there's something about it that feels just off to me. It might just be the diction. This is definitely though a line that I would workshop. Like, I don't think I would, if I was writing a second draft, this would not stay as the first line. Okay, next we have Project Moon. There was a corpse nearby. Project Moon is my YA fantasy. I'm conflicted. I'm conflicted about whether or not this should be on what it says on the tin, or if it's doing not enough. I think it's doing not enough. I don't know. Like, personally for me, I would like a first line that's just doing a little bit more, that's like steeping us a little bit more. The reason that I'm getting a little conflicted is because I do think that like the image of a corpse nearby is inherently in and of itself startling and engaging, but I do think if I was working on this now, I would try to dig a little bit deeper into it. The tone of Project Moon, the prose is a little bit more terse, and the character whose perspective this is, she is a very like terse, matter-of-fact kind of character. So maybe there's a case to be made there. I still though, I don't know, just knowing me and my writing style, I think I'm still gonna put it on doing not enough. Okay, next we have June. This is a novella that takes place in the same world as Project Moon, but it is like, it's the main characters are side characters in Project Moon. How can I describe the early years? Oof, okay. I think I'm gonna put this in magnum opus. And let me explain why. The tone of the novella, first of all, it's in first person. So it's a lot more intimate of this one character. It follows him as a child into his adulthood, and it's him telling the story in retrospect. So there's a quality to this story that is very much about, just like looking back on your life, really. There's sort of like a grandiosity to that. And I think that there's something there with like the first line of the novella being a question. He's sort of like a reserved, nervous kind of person, always constantly unsure of himself, and that is like something that he has to overcome. But yeah, tonally, I think that I think that this is a good opening line for him. I don't think I would change it at this point in time. Next we have Nora. Someone is trying to tell a ghost story. My eyes are open on this one. My eyes are open. There are things I like about it. Nora is it's a contemporary short story that I worked on last year, and it's about a group of young teenagers who break into an abandoned building in their small town. The passive voice is here, which is like, discuss with the class whether or not we like that. There's something intriguing about the phrase, someone is trying to tell a ghost story. My eyes are open because why is someone trying? How can you try to tell a ghost story, you know? I'm not going to put it in magnum opus because if I was workshopping this right now, I don't know if I would keep that line. Like, I think I would still tinker with it, but I don't hate it. Okay, next we have Nightward, and specifically draft 1 of Nightward. I'm currently writing draft 2 of this. This is a adult fantasy. This is not the opening line of this book in my current version. From the slums, the Sarta Cabaret was something of a lighthouse, bright enough to mark the edge of the upper city, but distant enough that when it shone against the black sky, you never make the mistake of thinking that light would reach you. She's long. It's, I don't know. My hot take is that I don't hate a run-on sentence. I like a run-on sentence. As long as it's like comprehensible, I don't hate run-on sentences, but there's a reason I changed it, and I think it's because I think contemplating on like the exterior of this cabaret for this long is just not the vibe I wanted to set with this opening scene. So in my like current version of the story, I felt like I wanted to bring in the presence of the main character immediately. I just wanted to like introduce the main character faster, basically. I think I was just getting caught up in like wanting to do setting description and atmosphere that I felt like I wasn't weaving together the description, you know, as tightly with the plot. It just kind of felt like, here is a block of description, and then let's get to the plot. The more engaging type of writing is when you're able to like weave those two things together so nothing feels like info dumpy. I know what I was trying to do here. I was trying to like set up the cabaret as this like beacon of wealth that people from the slums of the city can like see from afar. This is gonna go in doing too much. I think she's doing too much. The next one is Marienda. In the public square, there is a stage lined with Christmas lights. I mean, this one is just doing what it says on the tin, I think. Marienda is a contemporary literary short story about a woman who like visits the Philippines for the first time. Contemplation on like ancestral roots. Yeah, I wrote this last month actually. This line on its own she's definitely not doing backflips. But I think like if you read on the rest of the paragraph, the line like makes sense. I don't think that there's anything like super evocative about it. It's literally just a description. I guess the relevance of the description makes itself known in the context of the first scene. Okay, lastly, we have Sway With Me Until We Bleed. The message hovers above the table, reflected backwards on the surface of their vodka shots. So this piece, I've talked at length about this story already. It is a cyberpunk piece. I've kind of been like describing it sort of as like a character study, is sort of a glimpse into this woman's life, the kind of like reflections and the struggles that she's having with identity. In this opening scene, she's essentially like sitting at a bar at a table across from someone else, and they're reading a message on sort of like a like a holographic screen. Not me, like not even knowing my own world building. But yeah, like you can imagine it. It's like a floating screen. And so the message that they're reading is like literally reflecting onto this like row of vodka shots. And I chose it as like the opening image because I wanted the opening image of this story to be something that is almost mundane in the context of this world, but is just off kilter enough to feel unsettling or weird. But yeah, so that's that. I wouldn't change this line as of right now, so I would put in magnum opus LOL. don't know, that was fun. That was fun. I maybe at some point, like down the line, maybe like next year or something, I'll do like a part 2 to this. It was kind of fun to just kind of look back on all of these opening lines and the different ways that we sort of approach starting a story. I think different writers have like different opinions on what makes a really strong opening line. So let me know what you guys think. Feel free to disagree with my rankings. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. As always, I hope all your writing projects are going well, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye.